I am an old man in Norway, and I have never once feared running out of money in my old age. There is a man 2 doors down from me, 74 years old, retired 9 years now. He was a school teacher, never a wealthy one. His pension is modest. He has no fortune in stocks, no rich children, no second house he rents out. By the numbers, an American planner would look at his accounts and tell him to keep working. And that man has not lost 1 hour of sleep over money in 9 years. He is not unusual here. Up and down this country, ordinary people with ordinary savings walk into old age without the fear that I am told sits on the chest of so many Americans your age. The fear of outliving your money, of the account hitting zero while you are still alive to watch it. We do not carry that fear, and it is not because of oil, and it is not because the state hands us everything. It is because of a single rule for money that a whole nation lives by, and that you can start using this week. You are already thinking it. Of course, a Norwegian doesn't worry. Free healthcare, fat pensions, oil money for everyone. Set that aside for now. I will be honest with you about the oil before we are done, and about what you do and do not have. I promise you that. But the rule I am talking about is not a government program. It is the way the same fisherman, the same teacher, the same widow on a small pension all think about a krone before they spend it. It works at the scale of one kitchen table, whether or not anyone is handing you anything. I will show you the rule itself, where it came from, the honest limits of it, and exactly how you put it to work on Monday morning. Here is the rule, and it is almost too plain to believe does the work it does. You never live off your savings. You live off what your savings produce. The pile stays whole. You eat only the fruit it grows, never the tree. Most people in retirement do the exact opposite. They live by spending the pile down, watching the number shrink year by year, doing quiet arithmetic in the dark about how many years are left before it reaches nothing. That arithmetic is the fear. We simply refuse to do it because we refuse to touch the root. A man who only ever spends what his money earns cannot run out because the thing that earns it is still there in the morning. We did not invent this around our kitchen tables. We do it as an entire nation in the open, and it is the largest demonstration of the rule on Earth. We found oil under the North Sea at the end of the 1960s. Now, every country that strikes it rich spends it. The money comes in, the spending rises to meet it, and a generation later the oil is gone, and so is the wealth.
We did something almost no one does. We put nearly all of it into a fund and left it alone. That fund today holds more than $2 trillion. It is the largest of its kind in the world. It owns roughly 1.5% of every public company on the planet, a slice of almost every great business you can name. Spread across all of us, that is over $390,000, standing behind every single Norwegian alive, newborns included. And here is the part that matters for you, the discipline that makes it more than luck. By law, the government may spend no more than about 3% of that fund in a year. 3%, roughly what it earns. The rest must be left untouched. Not for this government, not for this generation, for the grandchildren and theirs. A whole country that has decided, in writing, that it will not eat its own seed corn. That is the rule, made national. 2 more things we do with that fund tell you how the rule actually works. We invest the whole of it abroad, never at home, so that no single market, not even our own, can sink us. The eggs sit in every basket on Earth, and we mostly leave it alone. Since the late 1990s, it has earned a touch under 7% a year on average. And by now more than half of everything it holds is money it grew by itself, not money we ever put in. Left undisturbed, the root does the work. Everything I am about to tell you is that same rule, brought down to the size of one household. Your fund is smaller, but you have one. It is whatever you have saved, plus the home you own, plus the skill still in your 2 hands. That is your North Sea. So you do what we do with ours. You find out what it earns in a year, what the savings throw off, what the paid-off house saves you, what a day of your own work replaces. And you build your life to sit inside that yearly figure, so the pile itself is never spent down. Touch only the fruit. The number you should know is not, how much do I have, which only frightens you as it falls. The number is, how much does it make me in a year? Because that number can hold steady or grow until the day you die. Live under it, and the root is still in the ground at every birthday. That is the whole difference between a man counting down and a man at peace. The yield is only half the rule, and the half everyone forgets is the one you control completely. A small yield is plenty if you need little. So the second move is to need little, on purpose. We have a word for the target, nok, which means simply enough. It is not going without. It is naming the point at which you have what you need, and then letting the wanting stop. The trouble I see in your country is that the number is never allowed to be reached. There is always a bigger house, a newer truck, a finer version of a thing that already worked. The finish line moves every time you near it, so no amount ever feels like enough. And a man can retire with a fortune and still feel poor. Fix the number. Decide plainly what enough looks like for you. And a modest income that looked frightening suddenly covers a whole and comfortable life with room to spare. It helps that here, the man who flaunts his money is quietly thought less of, not more. A flashy car earns a raised eyebrow, not envy. That sounds like a small thing, but it pulls the engine out of the endless wanting. When no neighbor is keeping score with his wallet, it is far easier to look at what you already have and call it enough. Enough is not a sad word here. It is the door out of the worry. The fastest way to shrink what you need is to walk into your old age owing no one. In my day, a man measured himself by it. The aim of a working life was to arrive at the last stretch free and clear. The house paid to the last krona. No notes, no installments, no man anywhere holding paper with your name on it. A debt is a bill that arrives whether the fish bite or not, whether the market rises or falls. It is the one expense that does not care that you have retired. Money you do not owe is money you never have to earn again. A modest pension stretches twice as far across a house that is truly yours than across one you are still buying from a bank. Before you worry about growing the pile one more dollar, close the holes it leaks out of. Every debt you clear is a raise that the taxman cannot touch.
Where we do open the purse, we spend differently, and on a fixed income, it matters more than anything. We do not ask what a thing costs. We ask what it costs per year. A pair of good boots that is resoled and worn 20 years. A wool coat that serves 30 winters. A tool good enough that a son inherits it instead of replacing it. Set the price against the years, and the dear thing is almost always the cheap one. Cheap is the most expensive habit there is, because the cheap thing must be bought again, and each time you pay the full price of having bought poorly the first time. When your income no longer rises, you cannot afford to buy the same thing 5 times. So you buy it once, and you maintain it. And the maintaining is itself the cheap trick. A roof patched before it leaks, a car serviced before it breaks, a knife kept sharp. An hour of care costs a few cents and saves you the whole price of buying the thing again. The man who looks after what he owns ends up buying far less of everything. On a pension, the durable is not an indulgence. It is a form of income. Now I owe you the honesty I promised, because I will not sell you a clean story. Yes, we have the oil. Yes, we have a state that catches a person when he falls, and a pension underneath everyone. I am not going to stand here and pretend a $2 trillion fund is sitting behind your chair the way it sits behind mine. It is not, and anyone who tells you to just live like a Norwegian and ignores that is lying to you. But look closely at what actually does the work.
The oil is not the rule. Many countries found oil or gold or great rivers of money and spent every drop and have nothing now to show. What we did that they did not was the discipline. Spend only the yield, guard the root, and name our enough. The oil filled the fund. The discipline is what kept it. And the discipline costs nothing, belongs to no government, and crosses any border you like. That part is as available to a man in Ohio as to a man in Oslo. I am no banker, mind you, and your life is yours to weigh, but the way of thinking is yours to take for free. And one more honest thing, because it is the largest difference of all. Here, a long illness will not empty a man's savings. Where you live, it can. That is real, and you cannot wish it away. So you must build for it, with a larger margin set aside and left untouched, standing in for the one wall I have that you do not. Take the rule, yes, but do not copy a Norwegian and forget the bill he never has to fear. Most people spend their whole lives working on the wrong half of the rule. They labor to grow the pile. They read about growing the pile. They worry about growing the pile. They are asked from every television and every magazine the same question. Is your number big enough? And not one of those voices ever asks the other question, the easier one. Could your number be smaller? Fear is why. A frightened man buys things, and so it pays to keep you frightened that you will not have enough. But while you chase a bigger pile, every new comfort you take on quietly becomes a permanent cost, so the bucket you are filling springs a new leak each time you add to it. Growing the pile is slow, uncertain, and mostly outside your control. Shrinking what you need is fast, certain, and entirely in your hands. You can do the second one this afternoon. You will never fully master the first. So here is the work, and none of it asks permission from anyone. Sit down and find your true yearly need, not what you spend now, what you actually need for a good and dignified year. That single, honest figure is the target everything else serves. Then split your money in your mind into two things and keep them apart for the rest of your life. This is the root, this is the fruit. You eat only the fruit. The root you do not touch except in true emergency. Then go through what you owe, room by room, and close it. Start with the smallest and work up, because the feeling of clearing one makes you clear the next. Move your spending, dollar by dollar, toward the things that last and can be mended. And take back the small provisions a household used to do for itself. Grow a little, fix a little, cook from what is cheap and in season. Because every need you meet with your own hands is a need that no longer has to leave your account. Before you trust the smaller number, test it. Take one ordinary month and live inside it on purpose. Spend only what your plan allows and watch how it actually feels. You will find quickly that the figure on paper and the life it buys are nowhere near as frightening as the worry told you they would be. A rule you have lived for 30 days is a rule you will trust for 30 years. And last, the hardest and the most freeing. Say you're enough out loud, to your wife, to yourself. Decide what it is, and when you reach it, let the chase be over. Think again of my neighbor, the school teacher. A small pension, a house he finished paying for at 58 and has owned outright ever since. A garden that feeds him half the year. A simple cabin in the hills he shares with his brother that neither of them could have afforded alone, so they bought it together 30 years ago and have used it ever since. He has never in his life earned a large income, and he has never once feared a winter. And I knew another man who had 10 times the teacher's money and lived in fear of every dip in the market, because he was always eating his pile, always watching the number, always one bad year from the bottom. He had more and slept worse every single night. The teacher was not lucky. He simply lived inside the rule. He never spent his root. He kept what he needed small, he owed nobody, and he had decided long ago what enough was for him. The peace was not bought, it was built. This is older than our fund, older than our oil, older than money itself. Every farming people that ever survived a hard country knew one law above all the others. You may grind this year's grain into bread, but you never, ever eat next year's seed. Not in the leanest winter, not when the children are crying, not when the seed is the only food left in the house. Eat the seed, and you have traded one full belly now for an empty field forever. Guard the seed, and the field feeds you again and again for as long as you keep your hands off it. The whole of what I have told you is that one law, carried out of the barn and into the bank. Spend the harvest, never the seed. You do not beat the fear of running out by building a taller pile. There is no pile tall enough to quiet that fear, because the fear was never really about the size of the pile. It was about watching it shrink. You beat it the way we did. You stop spending the root and live on what it yields. You make what you need small enough that the yield is plenty. You owe no one, you buy what lasts, and you decide once and for all what enough is, and then you stop. That is the whole of it. A nation built the largest fortune on earth on those few ideas, and not one of them costs you $1 to begin. The oil we cannot give you. The rule was never ours to keep.